Hello, bonjour, bienvenue, and welcome back to another episode of a Woman of Leisure podcast. This would be episode 3. So, my plan is to come to you once a week with maybe 1 or 2 videos that outline some of the steps or each step in my book. There are 4 steps in my book, 4 creative steps to reinvention. And this is not theoretical framework. This is my lived experience. Okay. I am not a PhD or anything like that. I'm just sharing with you my journey in hopes that you get a little something out of it. So step 2, this is episode 3, but I'm going to outline step 2 is gathering your resources. And I want people to remember that 9 times out of 10, you are your own best resource. Yeah. Your resources are not always something outside of yourself. Your resources are 9 times out of 10 your capacity. It might be your capacity for patience. It might be your lived experience. It might be your natural talents. It could be your skills and expertise. It could even be your sense of humor, for goodness sake. So keep in mind, 9 times out of 10, you are your own best resource. Now, outside of that, we can get a little bit more creative with what we consider to be our resources. What do I mean by that? Well, one of my favorite resources is the thrift stores. I started shopping at the thrift stores long before I left New York, and I think it started when I went into makeup sales, and I had to wear all black. I love color, so I didn't buy design. I didn't buy a lot of black. So what did I do? I headed to the thrift stores and I stocked up on tops, everything that I would need for my working uniform. Didn't cost me a lot of money, but then as I was there, I started to notice the other things that were available. Case in point, brand new high designer shoes for under $20. Okay, they're still in my closet right now. Not to mention, when I went back to school, office supplies, school supplies. Parents, you know how your kids love to have fresh school supplies every year, despite the fact that their notebooks are maybe even half used, or their pens are still functional. Their pencils may not be fresh, but they're still pencils. Erasers, everything. Art supplies, high quality art supplies as well. Now, the beauty of the thrift stores is also what it allowed me to do with my money, and that was, at the time, travel. I love solo travel in that I've only done about 2 girl trips in my whole life, and they were great at the time, but no, I much prefer solo travel. Okay, you do what you want, when you want it. And also, because of the nature of my working environment, I had to go when I could carve out the time, because I had a full-time job, but I also had several other contracts. And that time that I was able to take off did not always coincide. So when I got the time to take off and actually travel in line, also with having the money, I had to strike while the iron was hot, and I did not have the time to wait on other people for whatever reason. So that's another thing. The other part of resources that we might be overlooking is volunteering your time. When you volunteer your time, it not only does well for the heart. I actually volunteered at the ASPCA because I do love animals. I volunteered at the ASPCA in Virginia. And the people that you meet, it's about the people that you meet. It's about the people that you meet. It's about the resources that they connect you to, okay? And also, when I went back to school and I started applying for scholarships and things like that, those were things they love to hear, that you volunteered within your community. So keep in mind, like I said before, your resources may not be something outside yourself. Your resources can be your time and energy, and people will value that. They really and truly will. So again, not only did I meet people who connected me with other programs, but those community organizations, there's some pretty influential people connected, and you just never ever know who you're going to meet. And because you're donating your time, 9 times out of 10, you can go in and say, I'd like to volunteer 3 hours a week. It doesn't have to be a lot, but simply enough to show that you think of others more, you think of others as well as think of yourself. The other thing about resources, remember, it can be anybody, including those baristas at the cafe. You'd be surprised what they know. Get friendly with people. As a matter of fact, it was while I was sitting at a cafe and I was doing some of my homework. I was doing my homework one day. And the beautiful thing about going back to school is you have a built-in community. But also you have student cachet. And student cachet will open up so many doors for you. Doesn't matter your age. When you tell people that you are a student, people will just open up this treasure trove of information, resources, job opportunities, versus when you tell them, let's say, oh, I'm a graphic designer or something like that. When you talk to them about your professional experience, they might be this is what I've experienced, they tend to be a little bit more closed off, and they wait for you to kind of, they kind of put you through a vetting process or whatnot. Tend to be a little bit more guarded, maybe because you might come off as intimidating or whatnot. But when you lead with, I'm a student, people will tell you anything. People will share anything. They want to be part of your process. They want to be part of your growth. And I remember sitting at the cafe doing some homework. And this woman came in that I've seen several times, whatever, we got to talking. And she shared with me a very high quality, what do you call that? Food bank in my neighborhood. And all that it required was your address, that you lived in the area. And because I was a student, I was unemployed. Was it that you had to be unemployed or retired? Something like that. I was unemployed. My father was retired, also lived in the community. So we would go over and go to these food banks. But guess what? They had the best quality food I've ever seen in my life. There were farm fresh eggs because we lived in a rural community. So the farmers would donate maybe 6 eggs, mini cartons of eggs. Also, Whole Foods. Those things that they couldn't sell landed right at the food bank. Okay? Also, they always had huge quantities of bananas. Because as you know, bananas, they have like a 2 or 3 day window. I personally prefer bananas that are a little bit more ripe when they have just a few freckles on them. Not too many. But then my father would just load up on these bananas. Every time we would go, there would be stacks and stacks of boxes of green bananas. So what I would do is I would take the bananas, I would take them home, and I started making banana bread like nobody's business. And it's worth being noted that I'm not a baker, okay? But I looked up the recipe, and I made so many different varieties of banana bread. And guess what? I put those bad boys in the freezer. And whenever company came over, whenever someone had a hankering or a taste for something sweet, out comes the banana bread. Put it in the freezer. They made great holiday gifts. They made great quick breakfasts also. And my father liked them for cereals and things of that nature. There's banana pancakes. There's so many different things that you can do. And I also found, well, I always knew, they also make great additives for your hair conditioner, okay, to strengthen your hair, because they have binding agents in them. So my point is maximize your resources, okay? Those of you who are professional cooks, you already know this, okay? You waste nothing. Waste not, want not. And that's what I learned with the community college. That's what I learned about gathering your resources. So remember, thinking outside the box when it comes to your resources. And lo and behold, it all worked out because when I moved to France, it's one thing to know what the GDP is and what the median what do you call that, income level is. It's one thing to know it in your head. It's another thing to see it. Okay, people out here do not make a lot of money. Okay, I am very, very fortunate to be living on a vineyard that's been in the family for generations, okay, overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. But even that, we are wealthy in resources, but not necessarily cash, which is why I work online. I say that to say that a huge part of the economy here amongst locals is the vide grenier, which literally means to empty the attic. So it's basically a huge flea market. And every weekend you can find one. Some are better than others, depending on where you go. I remember when I lived in Nice, I had a friend who was from Texas, and we went to one out in Cannes, and that one was particularly nice. Aside from that, I wasn't really too impressed with Cannes. But yeah, you find so many wonderful, wonderful, wonderful quality things. And then myself, especially being a woman going through menopause or whatnot, my size changes all the time, and some things work one week, sometimes they don't, so on and so forth. So it's definitely been a lot more efficient for me because I always had that knack for shopping. I don't want pre-owned or however you want to call it. So the vide grenier culture just kind of came naturally, and I absolutely love it. Aside from like things like my makeup or whatnot, I could care less about going into retail stores these days. So yeah. Oh, something else I almost forgot about. Again, when you are a student, that has another section of cachet in terms of accessing student discounts. Okay, you would be surprised who offers student discounts. I mean, I've seen everywhere from travel, everywhere from, as a matter of fact, there's something called, this one isn't, yeah, this one's for students, PCs for People. Are you aware that PCs for People, they sell refurbished, sometimes new, computers on a sliding scale for people of lower income? Okay, they sell refurbished computers at a very affordable price, sometimes new, for people of lower income status. And remember, I was not working, so, I was working at school. I was studying, work study. So I fell under that income range. So yes, your resources can be so vast. You just have to ask. I think Apple even had a student discount program. So yeah, a lot of times you just have to ask. That's the other thing too about resources. A lot of times you really just have to ask. A lot of these things are not advertised because people will take advantage of them. So if you ask, as a matter of fact, years ago, when I was teaching at the college, I was teaching the performing arts department. I was able to get a student discount as a teacher on my cell phone bill. And this was long before I left New York. This was like in the early 2000s or something. Don't know if they still do that. But again, a lot of these things are available if you ask. Asking properly, of course. So that's all I have for you today. Think a little bit more broad about your resources. Everything from you to the people around you. Like I said, it was the suggestion of my brother that I even went down to the community college, start asking questions. Lo and behold, I qualified for it. This just entire treasure chest just opened up to me and changed my life in ways I never could imagine. Okay, so that's all I have for you today. Tune in next time. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to talk about next time, but it will still be in this topic. So don't forget to download your free sample copy of my book in the description below, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in.